everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for coming back and clicking on a brand new video. Today we're diving into the recap of the dark romance manga, I'm Dating a Psychopath. If you love obsessive romance, psychological tension, and stories that keep you guessing till the very end, this one is definitely for you. Before we get started, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future recaps. Now, let's get into it. Right in the heart of the city, there was a massive construction site with a giant crane towering high above the skyline. They were building the tallest skyscraper in town, a sight that felt like a miracle for everyone, especially the younger crowd. When the construction workers showed up for work in the morning, he noticed once again how everything had been scattered around. As usual, kids had snuck onto the site and messed things up while no adults were watching. No matter how many times they were told to stay away, the kids kept sneaking in and leaving a mess. The worker complained to his boss, who was way too stingy, suggesting he should either hire another guard or at least set up some security cameras. A crushed Coke can rolled under his boot. He kicked it aside, grumbling that he hadn't signed up to be a janitor. If the boss wanted the place spotless, then he better pay extra for that. Frustrated, he kicked the can even harder this time, and it clattered loudly as it rolled across the floor. The can finally stopped, right against the heel of a woman's elegant shoe. Silence filled the room again, while the worker muttered under his breath. He hadn't expected to see anything like that, and shock washed over him. A part of him even felt afraid. He couldn't believe his eyes. In the corner of the room lay a young woman, her hands tied, her body covered with layers of newspapers. He realized instantly she was dead, and hurried to report it to the authorities. The shocking news spread quickly. Early that morning, a body had been discovered at a downtown construction site. Finn listened carefully to the morning broadcast, not even looking surprised. Reporters revealed the victim was 20-year-old Sharon Russo, who had been reported missing by her family the night before. Her coworkers kept asking Finn if she was okay. They noticed she had barely touched her food. Was she slipping into another trance again? It happened to her often, so no one at the office was really shocked. Finn just kept listening intently to the news, ignoring her coworkers' questions. The report mentioned the injuries sustained by the victim. The motives remained unknown. The entire site was sealed off, and the police urged locals to avoid the area. This was the third case of its kind in the city this year, raising suspicions that a serial killer might be on the loose. The girls at the office were stunned. That meant the city wasn't safe anymore. One of them whispered that the news was downright terrifying. They were horrified by the cruelty of the murder, and wondered where such hatred and brutality in people could possibly come from. Probably from a rough childhood and bad upbringing, they concluded. The thought of becoming a random victim was terrifying. It could happen to any girl, just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The investigation was ongoing, detectives working around the clock to collect evidence and track suspects. Authorities reminded the public to stay alert and to call in with any information. The girls agreed it was time to stop walking alone. They'd have to look out for each other. They turned to Finn, asking if she agreed, but Finn didn't answer a word. From the outside, it looked as if none of this fazed her at all. Her coworkers whispered to each other that Finn was probably daydreaming again. She often seemed completely lost in her own thoughts. Finn, however, had no doubts. It was him. But why did the other girls notice a faint smile flicker across her face? Yes, it was a smile, but not one of pleasure. It was more like a nervous reaction to the fear gripping every girl in the city. The workday dragged on, but the only topic anyone could talk about was the shocking news that had spread across town. By noon, work felt endless and exhausting. Still, they had no choice but to keep going, though the mood was heavy. Even her recent promotion felt meaningless. It didn't ease the tension at all. It was as if she could be fired any minute, but deep inside, she didn't even care. She was surprised to notice that some people showed up earlier than usual today. And once again, she was alone. Finn knew the others were gossiping about her behind her back, but she couldn't care less. She wasn't interested in talking to anyone. As always, she started her morning by checking the news, wondering if the killer had been caught yet. Another crime documentary, one coworker thought, rolling her eyes. She wanted to suggest Finn should really find a new hobby, but Finn wasn't interested in anything else right now. She had no hobbies, nothing that brought her joy. A coworker asked why she still hadn't found a boyfriend. When Finn replied that she wasn't interested, the woman just pretended to understand. That same coworker didn't usually meddle in people's business. But maybe it was time for Finn to find a new pastime, because her obsession with crime was pushing people away. 2 years at the office, and she still hadn't made a single friend. Finn considered this coworker her friend. But in reality, she had no choice. After all, the woman was her manager. Finn was surprised at first, wondering if the manager really meant it. But she was just joking. No need to take her words so seriously. Sure, they were friends, but her boss was too busy to hang out anyway. The manager was simply trying to say that Finn should try new things in life, blend in a little more with the people around her. Why had Finn never thought about dating someone? Was there really no one at the office she liked? For the first time, the manager wanted to have a real, honest conversation with Finn. She was kind-hearted and always tried to give good advice. She even asked what Finn thought about blind dates, offering to set one up for her. Finn respected her boss, though at times she found her a little annoying. The manager then called out to Isaac, reminding him he had forgotten to fill out some paperwork. She leaned toward Finn and whispered, for her to notice the guy standing off in the distance. That was Isaac Evans. Very handsome, but not exactly invested in his job. He always expected others to cover for him while he socialized. Still, he was friendly with everyone. Sure, he joked around too much, but those papers had to be sent today. The manager even teased Finn, asking if she'd like to be more like him. She admitted he was attractive, but she had never been interested in talking to him. She simply ignored him. Hard to believe he was the office rookie. He had instantly become a favorite among his colleagues. Everyone quickly noticed he was left-handed. That little detail made him stand out, and people found it fascinating. Some even whispered that he was a psychopath. But the manager disagreed, saying it wasn't fair to label people without really knowing them. Still, psychopathic charm worked exactly like that, captivating people, then manipulating them for personal gain. The manager gave some advice, saying you gotta accept the fact that good guys really do exist, and you shouldn't judge everyone by your own standards. Finn Lewis. Maybe that's exactly why people kept their distance from her. She'd say something unnecessary, and later, others just felt uncomfortable around her. Now it got interesting to hear what people actually thought of her. At first, she came across as someone easy to like. But over time, those positive traits started to fade. She let everything go in one ear and out the other. The workday was officially over, but some folks stayed behind to wrap things up. The manager thought everyone did a great job, but reminded them not to forget to clock out. She didn't want to come back to the office on her day off just to deal with stamps. Everyone knew how much she loved her job. She practically lived there. Coworkers wished the girl a nice rest, but she still reminded them not to be late for work on Monday. By the way, the manager decided to apologize for the sudden schedule change. Starting next month, and until it ended, Finn would be working the night shift. The manager knew Finn usually went home alone, but now things were different. She asked if Finn was scared of that. Finn had worked late before, so it didn't scare her. The manager was relieved. Outsourcing business processes was unpredictable, and luckily her contract had flexible hours. Otherwise, it was always up to the higher-ups. Finn never liked whining. She really was fine. The manager knew she was almost the perfect employee, never arguing about being overworked by the company. If she hated her position so much, why hadn't she quit already? But bills don't pay themselves, so she had to keep working hard. Late in the evening, Finn hurried home, but the thought of being vulnerable really scared her. She just couldn't understand why people were so obsessed with finding the one, as if it was the end of the world if they didn't. Why even live to old age, constantly worrying about loneliness? Sometimes, that was the best thing you could wish for at the end of life. The streets were crowded with people rushing home. Some of them had partners waiting for them, ready to spend a nice evening together after work. Finn decided she was better off walking her path alone. But deep down, sometimes, she did feel a little sad. Still, it was better than forced conversations with someone else when all she wanted was to gather her thoughts and rest after a long day. She kept walking, but stopped for a few minutes, lost in thought, to rethink the manager's words. She looked at her reflection in the glass and remembered the advice that she should try to be more like that office guy, Isaac. Finn kept staring at her reflection. She noticed how sad her face looked and wanted to see a smile there. But when she tried to smile, it just wouldn't come out. So she thought about helping herself with her hands. She figured nothing bad would happen if she tried to force herself to smile with her hands. As she leaned closer to the glass, she suddenly realized someone was standing on the other side, watching her strange movements with interest. When she looked closer, she saw that the person was actually familiar, and it didn't even surprise her. It was Isaac Evans, the so-called office psychopath who tried to talk to everyone like he'd known them his whole life. Isaac knew right away it was her, so he called out, but she pretended not to hear and completely ignored him. She quickly stepped away from the window, deciding to just keep walking home without answering. By the time the guy came out of the building, Finn was already far ahead. She had hurried away fast. Without thinking much, the guy decided to follow her, but she picked up her pace. The road ahead got tougher. She had to pass through areas with barely any people. And with the kind of news going around the city, folks were too scared to walk alone in deserted places. From shocking murders to sudden robberies, there was enough lawlessness to give a whole nation chills. Finn popped her earbuds in and decided to listen to a podcast about criminal cases that dragged listeners into the darkest corners of the underworld. They invited people to join their program, uncovering motives, methods, and the madness behind infamous cases. You had to listen carefully, imagine yourself in those situations, and fully dive into the stories. Sadly, in today's world, women faced the widest range of dangers. And one of the most common problems was stalking. Stalkers weren't funny at all. These creepy men were willing to pay any price just to terrorize their victims, forcing them to live in anxiety for years. What made stalkers truly terrifying were their methods. Tracking with cameras, GPS devices, or relentless chasing that bordered on obsession. It was crucial to know what signs to watch for, to stop them in time. When Finn got out of the subway, her house was just a short walk away. But the street was completely empty. It was already really late. Streetlights were lit only every other pole, leaving patches of darkness. Even Finn felt a little uneasy. As she walked, never looking back, she could feel someone following her. She knew she had to pick up her pace to figure out if she was really being followed. She also knew she couldn't look back. It might tip off the stalker that she was aware of him. Carefully, Finn opened her bag to pull out something she could use to defend herself. Without making sudden moves, she grabbed her pepper spray and held it tight in her hand. She had to be ready. Her pursuer could catch up fast. When she realized the stalker was already right behind her, she stopped, turned, and aimed the spray straight at his face. But she never got to use it, because standing in front of her was Isaac, who had been following her almost the entire way. Holding the spray at him, Finn demanded to know why he just wouldn't leave her alone. But he didn't bother asking her permission to walk her home. The guy stopped just in case, so she wouldn't accidentally spray the pepper spray. She knew perfectly well that if she sprayed it directly in his eyes, it would hit him hard. Isaac didn't get it. Could she really be serious about using pepper spray, even though she knew exactly who he was since they worked in the same office? He still hadn't answered her question, so she didn't understand why he was following her. Earlier, she had mentioned hearing loud music and noise through the wall. He guessed it was just a misunderstanding. He lived nearby, so he was walking the same way as Finn. But she didn't believe him. It seemed like he was lying. She didn't see anything funny about it, but she wondered why she had never run into him in this area before. He had just moved here recently, and this road led straight to his place. Plus, he'd never met her here before and had no idea she lived in this neighborhood. Finally, everything became clear. Her coworker turned out to be her new neighbor. It turned out they didn't just live in the same building, but literally next door to each other. An incredible coincidence that amazed them both. Working together in the same office, they never even guessed they lived so close. Apparently, because of her night shifts, she had never run into him before. So Finn asked when he had moved into this apartment. Those boxes by the door were his, but why hadn't he brought them inside yet? Isaac had moved a few weeks ago, and the boxes were empty. Though he still had plenty to unpack and organize, he apologized for the mess in the hallway, promising to clean it the next day. She said it was fine. They didn't bother her. She asked just out of curiosity. But what was happening was incredibly surprising. Finn got curious about what he meant and wanted to hear his explanation. Isaac decided to ask her a strange question, but she shouldn't be scared. And she didn't have to answer. He was just curious about her thoughts. He'd never thought about this before since it hadn't happened to him. But today, pondering it, he wanted to know if she believed in fate. It felt really strange for her to talk to a guy in an empty hallway, especially answering such odd questions. She hadn't thought about it before, but it really did feel like fate. They hadn't interacted at the office at all, but got to know each other near their building. Sometimes she caught herself feeling like the universe was trying to send her an important message. Just the odds of them even working together were ridiculously low. He was more than sure he had spotted her a few times in this area. Later, something completely unexpected happened. Their apartments were on the same floor, which was almost impossible to imagine. He was skeptical about stuff like this, but maybe there had been too many coincidences between them lately. Finn was also impressed, but didn't want to focus on it too much. After all, anything could happen, even in a big city. Recent events, though rare, were happening often enough to notice. She didn't know why, but she started feeling nervous, constantly twirling a small piece of her hair. These things have deep meaning for people who constantly think about them. To be honest, abstract ideas weren't really her thing. These episodes were either caused by various factors or just random chance, and there were really only two explanations. He tried to understand her, but Finn was saying strong things that were hard to grasp at first. Quite a conclusion, but hard to argue with. It made sense logically. Finn decided to end the conversation. She was exhausted and wanted to go to sleep. She said again, congrats on his new place. He thanked her, really enjoying the chat, happy to have such a nice neighbor. He wished her a good night and headed to his apartment. Just as she was about to open her door, Isaac called her again. Seemed like he wanted to say something more. As coworkers said, he really loved to talk, and she already understood that perfectly. She paused, curious what other thought had popped into his head, wanting to hear her opinion. Then she noticed he had known her name from the very start, but never emphasized it. It seemed like he knew everything about her, even her age, birthday, and that she had been working at the company for 2 years without missing a day. Practically a perfect person. Rarely made mistakes, never joined team-building events. She had never attended parties, didn't drink or smoke, yet he liked that about her. Finn didn't understand what was happening, but he kept talking about her. He said he knew she had few friends and spent most of her time alone. Loved watching documentaries about crimes, especially ones with psychopaths. He talked about her as if he had been observing her entire life, making a documentary about her. He hoped it didn't sound too creepy. Everyone in the department had heard rumors about her, so he figured it was better than asking coworkers directly. After getting her address, he guessed it and found out. Her neighboring apartment was vacant. That's why he didn't want to lose the chance. It felt like everything was lining up perfectly. That's the feeling overwhelming him now. And what if it really was the work of cosmic forces, fate itself? Though he forgot that Finn didn't believe in it. He thought she might find this romantic, but was glad to hear otherwise. After figuring this out, he went straight to the place. The guy finally admitted he was here just for her. Isaac had said so much about her, but nothing about himself. Finn knew almost nothing about him and hadn't been curious enough to ask coworkers either. Was he stalking her? Gathering all this info with intense curiosity and following her? He smiled. Maybe that's what it would be called now, though he didn't care. He just wanted to get closer, not hurt her. At first, he just wanted to be friends, hoping it would work out. When he first saw her at the office, he thought he could build a relationship. But honestly, it took him a long time to gather courage to talk to her. By the way, was she aware of the latest news about the serial killer? It was dangerous to walk alone on dark streets right now. Could it be that he directly confirmed her words? Finn thought. But Isaac figured it wasn't a bad idea to go home together. After all, they both had night shifts. She was about to open her apartment door, but he was patiently waiting for a positive response to his friendship offer. She, however, didn't think it was necessary. Not wanting to answer, she quickly opened the door and was about to step inside. When he didn't hear a response from Finn, he seemed disappointed. But he didn't insist. Finn wished her neighbors sweet dreams, said it was nice talking to him, and that she'd see him tomorrow at the office. When she called him by name, he was surprised. She knew his name too, but didn't want to admit it right away. Could it be that she knew everything about him, but didn't want to emphasize it? Something about this felt strange to him, though he didn't yet know what. He smiled, thinking it was a clever tease on her part. She made it clear that he didn't know much about her, and nobody would tell him. Teased, joked, without even raising an eyebrow, he thought, realizing his neighbor wasn't an ordinary girl. Once the door closed, she exhaled in relief and leaned against it. Surprisingly, he did the same on the other side. They didn't even realize they were standing back to back, with only the door between them. Finn thought he was a psychopath, and Isaac thought the same about her. News about the psychopath was on everyone's lips. So she decided to look up everything known about these cases. It seemed as if it had happened far outside the city, where there weren't many people. The perfect place for a crime. The victim had no idea these were her last moments, which felt like the happiest for her. Everything seemed like a fairy tale, and the psychopath always said things that captivated the victim, leaving no room to suspect anything horrifying. His gentle smile seemed enchanting, while the cheerful mask hid terrible intentions. Unaware, the victim was alone with the criminal. In such a situation, nothing could stop him from carrying out his disgraceful plan. This could happen to any girl who didn't want to be alone and tried to arrange her personal life. Apparently, they claimed the maniac was the same psychopath and had a particular disorder. Usually, they show empathy and remorse for their actions. Wasn't it obvious that they were dealing with a serial killer who had already claimed 3 lives? Not every thug has such a disorder. Plus, not all mentally ill people are heartless, though combined types are common. Their criminal calculated everything, which is why he hadn't been caught yet. How law enforcement generally caught such scoundrels who made no mistakes? According to some theories, maybe the killer wanted attention or to convey something, while others thought it was just fun for him. Whatever the motives, the fact of multiple victims couldn't be ignored. Otherwise, the city's atmosphere would be tense. She paused the video, but her thoughts were a mess. Could it be that the psychopath was among people by day, committing his heinous crimes by night? The video was very long, and Finn was so tired that she fell asleep without even realizing it. When she woke up and looked at the clock, she realized she had slept long and deeply, oversleeping. She needed to get up quickly, as she hadn't expected to oversleep. Even in a hurry, she decided to sit at her computer. She did this every morning and didn't want to break her routine. She immediately opened the crime news, curious about the investigation details of the maniac's murders. It seemed her thoughts matched the experts. This meant she understood the investigator's psychology and tried to figure out the psychopath's psychology. It was confirmed that all the victims were killed by the same person. The crimes were executed differently, but shared some identical details. She wondered if the police would manage to find the culprit and punish him with the full severity of the law. Everything she wanted to know, she couldn't find through a regular computer search, so she'd have to investigate elsewhere. They guessed they would meet again soon, so she'd have to figure out everything she got curious about. The workday at the office was coming to an end. Although there wasn't much work left, everyone was exhausted and ready to head home. But Finn had the evening shift today, so her workday was only just beginning. For now, her workspace was empty, even though she should have been there already. Usually, she arrived a few minutes early to prepare everything before the shift started. The manager was already waiting for her, wondering why Finn was late today. Was this something new, or a sign of the apocalypse approaching? It meant she no longer had to pay bills and could enjoy the remaining days. Isaac had already arrived at the office. Raising his hand, he wanted to greet the manager, who was standing by Finn's empty desk, lost in thought. The manager was surprised. Had she missed the moment when she started communicating with him as an equal? The guy smiled and immediately guessed that she was in a bad mood. The manager noticed that he was in a great mood, unlike her. Had something happened that even a night shift couldn't upset him? He seemed to be radiating happiness today. If he wished, he could share his pleasant moments with the manager. Isaac asked if she wasn't here. The manager didn't understand at first, but then realized he meant Finn. She probably hadn't yet gotten used to her new office schedule, hence the delay. Strange that she hadn't heard from her yet. Usually, Finn didn't skip work without notifying the manager in advance. Isaac's expression changed dramatically. He was surprised. Could something have happened, causing her delay? The guy even swore, saying maybe it was his fault. The manager asked what he meant. What could he have done? He didn't want to explain further, so he quickly decided to leave the office, not even listening to her until the end. Outside, it was almost dusk. The sun was setting behind the horizon, and the sky was covered with thick clouds. Isaac left the office building, worried about Finn. He didn't know where to go. The manager followed him out, deciding to light a cigarette. It seemed like it would help calm her concern a bit. She decided to ask Isaac what they had done together last Friday. He replied that Finn's home was practically next to his new apartment. They were now neighbors. The manager was surprised. Could he really have meant that seriously? She thought Finn liked him, but she didn't expect him to act so boldly. He swore it wasn't intentional. It was just a silly coincidence. But the manager held hope, because otherwise, it would be very suspicious. She didn't want to think that he resembled a stalker. Isaac agreed the manager was right. It did sound strange. He probably scared her badly. He had taken it too seriously. He asked the manager if she knew that Finn was obsessed with psychopaths. That's why he acted like her new neighbor stalker, just to see her reaction. He thought it was going very well, but she just stood there with a blank stare. She didn't flinch. Casually, she entered the building password as if he wasn't even there. Perhaps Finn realized he was pretending. It seemed so, as the manager immediately noted she was a clever girl. The manager believed that was why she hadn't come to the office today. Didn't he think she'd only return for that reason? Apparently, their opinions about this girl were different. She was sure Finn just rolled her eyes, thinking him a loser or something similar. Though the manager herself was a bit quirky. Now, thinking about it, the manager realized that Finn probably already considered him a psycho. His foolish idea only reinforced that status. He didn't understand why the manager laughed at him. Why hadn't she told him earlier? The manager stopped him from saying too much. Was his whole psychopath act actually real? Had he not even pretended a bit to seem normal? But he didn't think of that, though doubts crept in. Maybe the manager thought he had made it all up. Why did he decide that? Was he really an idiot or a complete scoundrel? The manager even got angry at him as he hadn't thought through the game he'd invented. What was wrong with him? The manager wondered, thinking he had long stopped joking foolishly. Luckily, she hadn't called the police in response to his ridiculous antics. He didn't argue and agreed. Finn hadn't called anywhere yet, so everything was fine. After all, it was just an innocent prank. The girl didn't think the prank was innocent or the guy hopeless. She felt foolish, thinking they suited each other well. And perhaps it was partly her fault, believing Finn liked him. The guy was a little embarrassed, and probably for good reason. He really wanted to explain everything and apologize to Finn. He hoped the manager would agree to help. But she refused, believing he was on his own now. He had a chance, and he lost it. She no longer wanted to be a mediator in their interactions, so she refused him help. Isaac genuinely regretted his actions, and he said it seriously. The manager thought that after such an act, Finn probably didn't even want to see him. She wished him luck and advised him not to prank anyone again. Amid the crowd on the street, Isaac seemed to spot Finn. It really was her, thank God. And he felt a huge sense of relief. Judging by her appearance, she didn't look disappointed at all, and she was dressed incredibly beautifully. Still, the manager thought he behaved like a complete animal. No wonder Finn didn't want to talk to him. It was simpler for him to give up. The guy, again, didn't listen to her fully and decided to follow Finn. He had a plan on how to apologize to her properly. The manager wanted to know what he planned to do, but the guy raised his hand and shouted that he would follow her advice. That is, not give up. She had just canceled all her weekend plans anyway because the weather was supposed to be bad. She realized she simply didn't feel safe. She couldn't blame him, as the news scared her too. It was curious. What was the police even doing? They needed to stop this as soon as possible. In any case, she suggested going to a new ramen cafe that opened nearby. She arranged the meeting, finished her conversation, and continued walking through the crowd, unaware that Isaac was following behind her again. When she entered the building, she went to the elevator and called it. Just a little longer. It was almost at the first floor. When the elevator arrived and the doors opened, she quickly tried to get inside. As she took her first step into the elevator, she didn't even notice Isaac catching up. She calmly pressed the door close button, but hadn't yet selected the floor she needed. As the doors were almost closing, she noticed a hand trying to hold them open. When the doors opened again, she saw Isaac standing opposite her, hurrying toward the elevator as well. The guy entered the elevator, but was breathing heavily, having almost run the entire way to catch up with Finn. He couldn't say a word because he was trying to steady his breathing. After calming down a bit and catching his breath, he finally greeted her. Finn wasn't even surprised to see Isaac by the elevator. She looked calm, as if this situation had happened many times before. She greeted him back. Isaac wanted to talk to her, but couldn't bring himself to start the conversation. The girl thought he had run out of energy, as he looked concerned. Isaac noticed she was in a hurry and wanted to know where she was going. He apologized for breathing so hard and not being able to talk properly, but he had rushed because he wanted to catch up with her. Finn wondered why he was chasing her. Did he want something from her? The guy gathered courage and asked her to calmly listen about last Friday. He was very embarrassed about his behavior and everything he had said to her. It was all untrue, just a fabrication. Finn asked if it was a made-up story about stalking. He explained that he hadn't intentionally moved closer to her, it was just a strange coincidence. After the pepper spray incident and learning they were neighbors, he thought it would be funny to pretend to be her stalker. It was a very foolish and thoughtless act, and he genuinely regretted it. All the information he knew about her came from their colleagues, and he hadn't lied about her popularity in the office. He fully understood that Finn had every right to be upset or not talk to him at all, but he hoped she at least didn't hold a grudge. Finally, he dared to suggest they start over and be real friends. Was he pretending? Finn wondered. She understood his intentions, but didn't want to end the game. It was very frustrating, but she was intrigued. She found it fascinating that she had a psychopathic neighbor and potential stalker with whom she played cat and mouse games. She thought her life could turn into a thriller movie, which upset her greatly. Well, although it was upsetting, she had to return to the real world. Isaac looked at her, waiting for her response. He didn't understand why she hadn't reacted at all when she heard the truth from him. He needed to think of what to say next and plan ahead to continue this game in reality. Not knowing what to do next, Finn just laughed, calling it a great joke from the guy. She was also amused by his stunned face, which seemed to understand nothing of what was happening. She decided to apologize as well for saying strange things and probably scaring him a bit. Now she understood why he liked it. The pranks were really funny. A great joke, pretending to be a stalker, and she actually believed him. He was genuinely unusual. She hoped they were now even, so no one needed to prank back. She smiled and said, "It was nice to meet the real guy from the office, Isaac." The elevator doors opened, and she stepped out, not wanting to say goodbye, knowing they would see each other again. Isaac didn't hesitate and followed her, still looking a little odd, but wanting to talk more. He called out to her, asking her to wait, but she walked on without even turning her head. He actually wanted to be closer to her because he really liked her. He knew a cafe with the best pastries and coffee, and if she didn't like sweets, they could go somewhere else. He promised they would definitely return before the break ended, so maybe she wouldn't refuse to have lunch together. Is he really going to treat me? She thought. Isaac wanted her to order whatever she liked. Finn loved sweets and thought an overbreak wouldn't hurt anyone. Would she agree to go on an overbreak with him after he had pranked her so absurdly? Why had he stopped? She hadn't refused to go for a snack together. It was noticeable that her smile didn't change at all. Was she really unaffected by his antics? She walked ahead, and Isaac followed behind her again, almost as if stalking her. He didn't understand why he always acted so strangely around Finn. Looking at her, he realized he really liked this girl, which probably made him constantly awkward and behave oddly. She was unusually beautiful and didn't act like everyone else. Her behavior stood out from her office colleagues, and she didn't like gossiping. Finn was the girl he had been searching for a long time. He would do everything not to lose his chance and stay close to her. Over coffee, the manager and Finn were discussing their personal matters. The girl mentioned that Isaac had invited her to lunch. The manager was surprised. Had he really dared to do that? She considered him very persistent, understanding that he had no intention of stopping. Finn reacted very calmly to the lunch invitation, as they were simply going to eat at a cafe. "That can't be," said the manager. Could she really be planning to have lunch with Isaac? Finn didn't see anything unusual and had already agreed to the meeting. The manager thought she should wait and consider it carefully, as this guy was unusual, not like the others. Besides, she barely knew him and needed to get to know him better. Wasn't this her idea from the start? Finn wondered. What had happened for the manager to change her mind? The manager had insisted too much about dating, but Finn didn't need to take it too seriously or rush things. Finn was beginning to build a relationship with this guy, just as their manager had wanted, but now it contradicted her intentions. Finn had long suspected that the manager was making plans regarding these people's personal lives, constantly nudging them toward each other. Isaac knew some very personal things about Finn, but most of the information had only been shared with the manager, so the girl assumed he had learned it all from her. But as a manager, she couldn't just give out information about her employees to anyone who asked. Doing so could seriously compromise her safety, even if she had violated protocol. She advised the manager to be more independent, Otherwise, she could get into trouble with the higher-ups. The manager sincerely apologized to the girl. She felt awful and admitted she had been wrong. It had been a big misunderstanding, as she had known Isaac for a long time from a previous job. The manager hadn't thought about bringing them together. But then the guy started showing interest in Finn, and the idea came to her mind. She believed Finn and Isaac had a lot in common and seemed like a very good match. Finn recalled that Isaac had asked colleagues for information about her and considered her very popular. Could it be that he was eccentric only with colleagues, but sincere in his feelings for her? By the way, he had become known for his ridiculous sense of humor, but the manager thought he had outgrown it. Now, Finn probably knew he was still a bit of a fool. He had told her about the terrible prank he played on her, and for that, she considered him a total jerk. That was why the manager asked her to cancel the meeting. Finn thought nothing serious had happened, so she didn't want to refuse the meeting. Besides, she was curious to see how he would behave when they were alone. After everything, she still decided to meet him? The manager was surprised. But Finn thought the guy was just trying to be friendly, and there was nothing unusual about it. Besides, it was just lunch, so there was no need to worry. Nothing bad would happen. It seemed the stupid prank had actually worked. But why did Finn take it so lightly, which even raised some suspicion? Finn headed to the cafe to meet Isaac, as they had agreed in advance. When she entered the place, the guy had been waiting for her for a while and was very happy she had dared to come. Isaac gathered courage and placed the order without involving her. He thought she would like his choice of treats. Finn really enjoyed the food and didn't argue with his menu choices. There were so many treats that she didn't know what to eat next. This is truly food of the gods, Finn thought. When the guy looked at her and smiled, it annoyed her because she didn't understand what was so funny. Isaac found her adorable right at that moment, as if she had been transformed by the bite of the pastry. Moreover, for someone who supposedly liked sweets, the order was worthy. He enjoyed treating Finn, especially since she liked the treats. The girl wondered if he was concerned about the bill and suggested splitting it. The guy agreed without hesitation. When he looked at her with such curiosity, she didn't like it. A look like that could ruin her appetite. The guy understood her hint. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable. He was simply happy to be able to talk with her calmly. Looking at him, Finn realized that he seemed completely normal right now, the exact opposite of what she had heard about him. She thought people still held the same opinions, but she couldn't say it was entirely untrue. She herself wasn't the most social person around. Her manager said she was very unusual, which made others uneasy. Finding friends had never been easy for her. Perhaps it was because she had completely different interests. She wasn't upset about it, just unwilling to invest more effort than it was worth. The guy fully understood where she was coming from and supported her, despite considering her special among everyone. Before their meeting, he had been in similar situations as she was. It's very hard when others view the world differently. People judge those who didn't fit their ideas of normal life. If only they took the time to try to understand why someone does what they do. He wanted to tell her he didn't think she was weird at all. She was wonderful, just as she really was. That's why he liked her so much and was curious about her personality. She felt very pleased to hear kind words addressed to her, especially since she had never heard anything like that before. Does he usually lure his victims with sweet words, not real sympathy, and things like that? Was he targeting lonely women, using his looks to gain trust, and then waiting for them to relax? His handsome face also worked to his advantage. He used the vulnerability of his targets, and when they finally let their guard down, he would strike. Had his perfect plan been discovered, but she wasn't the kind of girl who would be impressed by such kindness? Isaac listened carefully to her and couldn't understand. Was she joking so shamelessly, since such words couldn't be true? Then he wondered why she behaved as if she were interrogating him. It was even funny that she had considered him a psycho before their communication even began. And right now, she was convinced he was the serial killer reported on the news. He understood she had no intention of being polite with people. He thought they understood each other. If he wasn't mistaken, they had already said that ignorance is at the root of all superstitions. That's what he thought. Probably the impression she gave to others was very different from her true self. The girl wondered whether this charming and restless Isaac, with whom she had been talking, was the real him, or if he was just pretending to be someone else. The real Isaac might enjoy scaring people with his disgusting jokes. If he could pull off a ridiculous prank and sleep peacefully at night, it was scary to imagine what else he might be capable of. What else could he be lying about? No one knew. Perhaps he really was a cold-blooded killer. After all, he had heard that, judging by the knife wounds on the victims' bodies, the serial killer was left-handed, just like him. But Isaac had already apologized and thought it wasn't important to bring it up again. She couldn't just walk around the neighborhood calling people psychopaths and serial killers without proof. That could lead to serious trouble. But the girl decided to suspect everyone until they gave her a reason not to. Psychopaths were remarkable because they blended in with the crowd and seemed completely ordinary. By the time he noticed something was wrong, it could be too late. He wished she would wait a moment. He thought she had misunderstood him. He agreed that the girl was being cautious, but then why was she sitting here with him? Had she stopped thinking of him as a psycho? If he were a real killer, he wouldn't want people to see them like this. Besides, she didn't have many friends, which would automatically make him the prime suspect. Listening to him, Finn realized he wasn't as foolish as he had pretended to be at first. She agreed, and that was fair, but that didn't mean he wasn't a psychopath. Isaac realized that the girl had probably already decided he was guilty in any case. But he wanted to know why she was so fixated on the idea that he was a psycho. The girl wanted to think carefully before answering, wanting him to understand her correctly. Perhaps it was because she really wanted to meet one of them on her path. He didn't understand why she needed this. Was it to confirm some suspicions she had been curious about for a long time? Was it worth putting herself in danger for her whims, since it could end differently than she imagined? Finn didn't want to explain too much. She still believed he wouldn't understand her. It turned out that if he wasn't who she thought he was, their communication would end. The girl thought so. She had no reason to keep talking to him, except that she considered him a psychopath. And that fascinated her. The guy felt she was leaving him no chance. Nothing else about him attracted her. Maybe they could at least be friends. Even after all these silly talks and rudeness toward him, it didn't matter to him, as long as she was nearby. And that was all that truly mattered to him. It's his choice, Finn thought, and he can do what he thinks is necessary. But she didn't understand exactly what he wanted from her. The evening in the city was simply mesmerizing. People returning from work tended to their homes and then prepared for sleep. The streets were full of cars moving very slowly, creating huge traffic jams. It was already late evening. They needed to hurry to get home on time. Oh, damn, Isaac thought. We might make it, but we need to rush a lot. Finn was very calm, thinking everything was fine. They weren't at risk of being fired for taking a break. She really liked the night city. She felt it was a completely different world, shining with bright lights. The city felt carefree and quiet. She even wanted to take a walk alone, as it gave her a chance to gather her thoughts and rest after work. Finn was initially upset about having to work the night shift, but then thought that working at night wasn't so bad. The night shift completely fit her lifestyle, so it didn't cause extra trouble. Isaac noticed a change in her expression. She looked upset and deep in thought. He asked if she was okay and why she had stopped, since they needed to hurry. Now they had to go back, although they didn't want to, but it was necessary. She didn't understand why, but she couldn't take her eyes off him. He called her name, but she couldn't respond. It seemed her speech was gone. The girl looked at Isaac with a frightened gaze, as if she feared him. Could it be that he didn't inspire trust in her, even after their pleasant conversation at the cafe? He wanted to understand why she had stopped and wasn't moving forward. He tried to urge her, but she seemed completely lost in thought. They stood apart from each other, as if wary of something. Something strange was happening between them, but neither of them understood what exactly. They couldn't believe it, since Monday was supposed to be a calm day, yet they were overloaded with work. This meant they might have to work overtime today. The employee hoped that his girlfriend wouldn't mind postponing their date. They weren't thrilled about this work either, but since they were a team, they had to work together to finish faster. The girl smiled, thinking that the manager could try to be at least a little more optimistic. It would help lift their spirits a bit. The manager didn't know what Finn wanted to hear from her. She had been at this job long enough to understand how things worked. The guys were talking about things they didn't even know, but they definitely ate pizza. Finn didn't want to listen to idle chatter since it distracted her from work. They all seemed strange, and none of them wanted to work, so they were busy with anything but the tasks at hand. The manager went out to make an announcement to the employees and wanted everyone to listen. She suggested finishing the queue by 11, and she would treat everyone to pizza. In response, they said she was the best manager. They would definitely meet the deadline and still get to enjoy some delicious food. So everyone immediately started working, but it seemed only Finn was unaffected by the manager's announcement. She kept thinking about personal matters. When the girl sat at her desk holding her head, the employees asked what was wrong and if she was feeling okay. But when she raised her head, it was noticeable that blood was running from her nose. The manager was very scared and suggested she immediately go to the nurse. Someone needed to help her get to the doctor's office. One of the employees offered to help, but the girl refused, saying she could reach the doctor herself. Isaac didn't want to be pushy, so he told her to be careful. If she felt unwell again, she should immediately find a place to sit. To avoid disturbing anyone and distracting them from work, the girl tried to leave the office as quickly as possible. The guy really wanted to help Finn, but he didn't understand why she refused. Going alone in that condition was very dangerous. Finn reached the clinic, but there were many corridors, so she needed to decide immediately which direction to go. At such a late hour, the clinic had no one around, making it feel like a scene from a horror movie. She didn't understand why the hospital had to be so far away, why it wasn't nearby, especially with so many office buildings around. This frustrated her, since coffee shops were on every corner, yet reaching the hospital was so difficult. Not knowing where to go, she decided to ask someone. But it was hard, since there were almost no people around. The place was so quiet that her footsteps echoed throughout the hospital. It sounded as if she were walking barefoot on water, with a rustle as if she wasn't lifting her feet. Her heavy breaths could even be heard, loud and eerie. Childhood scenes came to mind. Creepy memories frightened her, but she was still curious. Without fully understanding her state, she wanted to calm down and focus on more important details. It seemed she was walking barefoot on cold water. The water was so clear that she could see her reflection. In the reflection, she appeared as a little girl, and she wanted to touch it. Leaning down, she tried to touch the cold water, but it seemed something was holding her, as if embracing her. Isaac wanted to support her, as he wasn't, coincidentally, near her. As always, he walked behind her, as if following her. Finn seemed to wake up and return to reality. She heard Isaac's voice and didn't understand how he appeared in her subconscious. The guy apologized, but it seemed to him that the girl felt unwell, as she looked like she was about to faint. He asked how she was feeling, since it was immediately noticeable that she was exhausted and overwhelmed. When the girl regained consciousness, she couldn't understand why this guy was near her again. Had he not given up on the idea of following her, and was he continuing his clumsy joke? Her condition was unsatisfactory, so she needed to go to the hospital to make sure her health wasn't at risk. She had a slightly elevated body temperature, but her condition was still normal. The doctor asked how often she experienced nosebleeds along with headaches. Finn didn't even know. It was the first time in a long while this had happened. After examining her, the doctor noticed that her blood pressure was slightly elevated. When the doctor asked if Finn had any idea why her blood pressure had risen, the girl thought for a moment, as she had no thoughts on the matter. Perhaps he had been working too much lately. But until today, Finn hadn't worked longer than necessary. Recently, however, she had been having trouble sleeping. Maybe this was connected to her health condition. She wondered what the cause might be, perhaps marathon sessions of documentaries, but she had been doing that for a long time. The doctor asked if Finn had felt stress or anxiety recently, or if she had any relationship problems. Finn turned her head and looked at Isaac, who was patiently waiting for the doctor to finish the examination. The doctor asked because sometimes stress and anxiety can cause high blood pressure, which in turn can lead to nosebleeds. These were isolated cases, but it would be better to avoid anything that could cause stress for now. However, if it happened again, she should consult a specialist. The doctor suggested Finn leave work early, and the manager didn't object. She decided to send her home, while the team would take care of the remaining tasks. Someone needed to give her a ride home. The manager was slightly worried that Finn might try to go by herself. Isaac wanted to support her and take her home, but he needed someone to cover him at work. The manager angrily told the guy to shut up, feeling the whole situation was happening because of him. But he didn't understand how he was at fault. Perhaps it was because he was foolish, and his actions seemed similar. Yet recently, she continued to see him. Could it be that he was just trying to find an excuse to leave work early? Why did memories of Noah appear again when Isaac was near her? Maybe it was a sign, and he was somehow closer than she thought. Isaac continued insisting on helping her, wanting a chance to make amends. She had a strange feeling, but thought it was time to leave. Her condition hadn't improved, so she needed to get home and lie down. The office wasn't far from her home, but she still had to wait for transportation, as she couldn't walk in her current state. The subway was almost empty, but a few passengers still passed by, also returning late from work. Some people say a person's personality is shaped by childhood memories, carried into adulthood. If that's true, what significance did her memories have for her now? Were they making her think she needed to change something in her life? The problem was that she didn't fully remember her past. Some fragments were missing from her main memories. They waited for the subway in silence for a while, but Isaac dared to ask if she was truly satisfied with everything. Accompanying her home, being a potential killer in her mind, didn't that worry her at all? Finn guessed he was joking, but still didn't think he would do anything illegal in such a crowded place. Moreover, she only agreed for him to accompany her to the subway station. She would go home on her own. That was fair, of course, but it was just his pitiful attempt to cheer her up, as she had been so silent the whole time. Finn noticed that cheering someone up wasn't his strong suit, and he didn't do it very well. The guy smiled, still thinking she was smart, even when she was sick. There was an announcement at the station. The train would arrive soon, so it was time to go. A warning told people to stay back from the platform edge and allow passengers to exit before boarding. Finn should go now. Before leaving, she thanked him for his help and wished him a good night. But Isaac didn't want to let her go. Grabbing her hand, he asked her to wait a little longer. He truly felt sorry for his actions, not wanting to ruin the relationship, which was already fragile. He wasn't sure how to act around her now so as not to appear despicable in her eyes. He didn't intend to cross boundaries or complicate things. He genuinely worried about her. But every time he offered help, it still looked foolish. Isaac knew that sometimes it was very hard for him to express his sincerity, so it came off as strange. But now he wasn't joking at all. He spoke sincerely. He was genuinely concerned for her health, feeling guilty. This time, it was the truth. He hoped his feelings would reach her. He asked her to take care of herself and get some proper rest. If his sincerity remained a mystery, it would reflect poorly on him. The subway doors were closing, so Finn needed to hurry. The doors closed. She stood by the window, looking at him. She wasn't fully sure of his sincerity, but it was clear he was very worried. Isaac really wanted her to change her opinion of him, to see him as a normal guy with feelings for her. He still stood on the platform, waiting for the train to depart, not taking his eyes off her. She waved at him as the train left the platform. She moved forward, while her persistent companion stayed behind. Standing on the platform, he still worried about her condition, wondering if she could get home safely. He wondered how she could trust her instincts about others. Finn hadn't even noticed she was holding something, then remembered that Isaac had placed something in her hand. When she opened her palm, she saw an omamori with Japanese kanji meaning protection. Morning came very quickly. She didn't even realize how fast the night had passed. The sun rose over the horizon, shining brightly through the window. The morning was warm and sunny. Although it was still early, her phone had already received a lot of messages. Then she remembered to wish Mrs. J a happy birthday. She also wanted to check how she was doing and whether Scott had been assigned a new case. Finn hadn't seen Mrs. J for a long time. Mrs. J mentioned that Scott was currently working on a serial killer case. She seemed curious. Maybe she wanted to know something. But Finn decided it would be better to visit her on the way. She really wanted to learn more about the serial killer case, as the story intrigued her greatly. If she visited Mrs. J, he probably wouldn't mind, Finn thought. Besides, it would look like she had simply decided to drop by chance. At the police station, the morning started very early. The staff had long been at their desks, but there was no work spirit among them. A man walked confidently down the empty corridor, hurrying with important matters. There was a lot of work, but the serial killer case was barely progressing. He was very angry because persistent reporters were once again trying to get any information about the killer. They constantly complicated the police's work. Someone had stolen his strawberry juice from the fridge again, which made him furious. He swore that if he found the thief, he would destroy them. The employees smiled, seemingly amused by the fact that the great detective Scott Lee had given an angry lecture. Did he really think someone had leaked information to the journalists? The detective didn't care. It didn't matter to him. But now the scoundrel knew the police were looking for him, and catching him would be even harder. Scott didn't understand why he had been assigned this case. But his colleagues considered him the best detective for a case worthy of his skills. By the way, this morning, materials from another precinct arrived and were already on the detective's desk. And someone else had also come to see him. When Scott entered his office, he saw Finn, who had taken papers from his desk without permission and was examining them. He became angry, thinking she was overstepping, as access to those files was forbidden. She had to put them back immediately. The detective asked why she had come. Didn't she have work to do? What was she snooping around for? The girl explained that she worked night shifts, so she had the whole day free. The detective didn't understand who thought it was a good idea to put a girl like her on night duty. He considered it foolish. He was curious how she got into the station and who let her in, since he had clearly stated that no outsiders were allowed, especially her. The staff were surprised when Scott called Finn an outsider, as he treated her almost like his daughter. But the detective thought that, although he had almost raised her, she was still too young to be his child. The detective asked the girl to leave the station. Why did she keep coming here? Didn't she have her own business to attend to? But the girl had brought him something. She thought it might be appropriate now. Detective Scott agreed to talk to her, but only for a few minutes, after which she had to promise to leave the station. Finn agreed and stayed. The detective didn't want her to come unannounced, so she had to always call him before visiting, or simply send a text message notifying him of her visit. Finn didn't like this rule, since she already knew in advance that the detective would tell her not to come. Of course, Scott agreed, as he considered the station not a playground. They dealt with crimes here. He advised her to spend time with peers and enjoy carefree youth. Maybe go to a bar, sing karaoke, or do other activities young people do. Finn wasn't interested in such fun. Moreover, she had no friends. The detective wasn't surprised because he knew her character well. Could it be that she really liked being at the station, while many would trade places with her? Every day they dealt with scoundrels ruining society. Young people couldn't imagine how lucky they were, yet they only complained. Finn didn't consider herself a child, so enough of treating her like one. She was an adult and came to the station because she felt safe only there. Scott paused briefly from his moralizing, ready to listen to the girl. Although she considered herself a burden to Scott, she didn't understand why he always sent her away. Did she annoy him so much that he didn't want to see her? Not at all. He was just very busy. Although Finn wanted to be a burden to him, if he didn't want to see her anymore, she would understand perfectly. The detective interpreted her words as manipulation. That didn't work on him anymore, and she knew it. The girl thought she shouldn't come here anymore, and the conversation could end. Just the thought brought tears to her eyes. The detective noticed Finn's strange expression and asked why she looked that way. Was she about to cry again? Unable to resist her pressure, the detective agreed to listen. He suggested she could come whenever she wanted, but only when no supervisors were present. He wondered if Finn had come to the station just for this, or if there was something she wanted to know personally. She had to answer honestly. Maybe something had happened, but she didn't know how to tell him. Finn heard that he had been assigned the serial killer case. The detective immediately stood up from his chair, and his guess was confirmed. She hadn't come here for him. He couldn't believe he had fallen for it, and he was curious about what she had said. But that question no longer mattered. He guessed who might have leaked the information. Were people really that bad at keeping secrets? Even his colleagues? Could it have been Noah? Finn cautiously said the name so no one else would hear. He couldn't reveal anything. It was part of an ongoing investigation. He thought the young girl didn't need that information, but he could say one thing. They still didn't know anything. He wondered why she thought of him. It was very curious. Lately, the killer was being mentioned on every news channel, and Noah seemed to have disappeared. She couldn't shake the feeling that it was him, which was why she had been sleeping poorly. Due to poor sleep and night shifts, the girl felt exhausted and tired. She was curious about Scott's opinion on the likelihood that Noah was the serial killer. The detective approached Finn, asking what was going on, as he thought it all belonged to the past. Why did she think of him again, as she had discussed with her doctor before? He asked if she was still taking her pills. Finn had stopped taking them last year. Her doctor said they were no longer needed. She had to hear that Noah had been released from prison 6 years ago. Part of his sentence included a ban on any contact with her, even after release. Whoever this serial killer was, he would catch him. There was no need to worry. She just needed to be careful and try not to be alone. The detective thought Finn wasn't in the best shape to work today. Why not give her a day off, and he could take her home? The detective reached into his pocket but couldn't find his keys. This made him very irritated, as he always lost them. He was so annoyed that he couldn't remember if he had even taken the keys with him. Scott constantly told Finn to forget about everything, but she wasn't very successful. The detective also began to worry every time the topic came up. Finn was already about to leave the station, so she wanted to take her purse from the table. She asked the detective if everything was okay. It wasn't too late yet, so she could get home by subway. Scott wanted her to wait for him in the car. He'd be there in 3 minutes. No need to worry about her. He needed to catch the criminal. And the girl believed the detective would manage. She wished him luck and a good day. No need. She could get home herself. Scott offered to pick her up after work and asked what time she finished. He suggested adjusting her work schedule, as it was dangerous to return home alone in the dark. By the way, she wouldn't be going home alone anymore because she had a new neighbor, also her colleague. His name was Isaac, and she mentioned it because she considered him a total psycho. If something happened to her, at least someone would know where to find the criminal. The detective suggested she try to get along with him. Was she starting this again? You can't suspect everyone. You don't throw words like that around. It was completely abnormal, because if she suspected everyone, She would never make friends or communicate freely with them. The detective noticed Finn's shoelaces were untied, so he suggested she pay attention to it. But then he decided to do it himself, as he had been used to doing it for her since early childhood. Finn thought that maybe she shouldn't have come here at all. It was selfish and intrusive of her. Her whole life, she had only stressed him out, adding him troubles. She knew perfectly well he had his own work, but she still couldn't resist warning him about her suspicions. She simply couldn't talk to anyone the way she could with Detective Scott. But she should have stopped long ago. She just couldn't burden him with her problems anymore, so she decided not to come to the station again. But she wanted him to know that she had really come to see him. She didn't intend to disturb him, but the news had shaken her, and that's when her paranoia flared up. She knew the detective had a huge pile of cases, so there was no need to worry about her. She was confident everything would be fine. He didn't need to fuss over her. She could manage on her own. But she wouldn't mind if he decided to check on her, just so he wouldn't think he had to babysit her. Finn was already too mature, so such functions should be switched off in his subconscious. Finn was grateful to him for everything he had done. Without his help, anything could have happened to her. The detective smiled. He could see how grown up she had become. She looked quite neat. Perhaps today was a special day. Isaac dared to visit Finn, but he wasn't sure if she would be happy to see him. He stood at the door of her apartment, knocking, but no one opened. She had probably already left, he thought, but he didn't hurry away. At that moment, he regretted not taking her phone number. He could have called to see how she was doing. The woman took an item that was lying on the detective's desk. She saw Finn throw it out of her bag. It seemed to her that Finn did it on purpose. The girl looked quite concerned, so she asked what the detective had said to her again. He considered himself a heartbreaker, but had rejected the girl who was interested in him. Detective Scott couldn't understand why she was so interested in this. Didn't she know that curious people sometimes get hurt? Shouldn't she be indifferent, since they were talking about Finn? As her guardian, he clearly couldn't handle the role properly. The detective was surprised because Finn literally came to him and said she no longer needed a nanny, assuring him she was already mature and independent. Perhaps she was just trying to present herself well, so he would finally see her as an adult, not a child. The detective thought the girl read too many romance novels. But how long could he pretend not to notice? Finn probably had feelings for him, and he could no longer ignore it. He needed to be honest with her. Scott thought it was better to leave things as they were. Sooner or later, she would outgrow it. Finn was confused, which was understandable. She barely interacted with anyone. Her father was abusive, and her only friend turned out to be a cruel killer. Her relationships with men had never gone well. She didn't truly know love or tenderness until her aunt took her in, and they quickly became very close. Perhaps because her aunt gave Finn what she lacked: maternal affection and a role model. But after her aunt's death, the girl refused to join a new family that wanted to take her in. That's why the detective requested to be transferred here, so he could watch over her until she came of age. Due to past abuse, Finn was always overly tense when meeting new people, which naturally didn't help her socialization. He just wanted the girl to enjoy life like any normal person. Find a hobby, hang out with friends, or even date someone. She just needed to understand that she deserved happiness, and that not everyone around her was as terrible as her father. And this would really happen if she moved forward. But moving forward meant letting go of past memories. Since he was one of the people involved in her past, she needed to stop interacting with him to avoid further trauma. Their conversation was interrupted by a colleague who had very important information. He had materials on the first case. Perfect, thought the detective. They could get back to work. The girl wanted to say a few more words to the detective and then finish the conversation about Finn. She wanted to say that only Finn herself could decide how to live her life and whom to have in it, not him. Scott knew this well, which is why he didn't want Finn to visit him too often. But he still worried about her, especially about her mental state. He suggested discussing it later, since now was the time to catch the main criminal in their city. The manager was working, but at that moment she couldn't concentrate, so she often made mistakes. The girl was very tired, but she still needed to finish the tasks scheduled for today. Looking up, the manager noticed Finn had appeared in the office. She asked how she felt and if she was ready to start the night shift. All the office staff were worried about her and whether she was well enough to work today. Finn was surprised. Could they really be worried about her? Or did she just feel guilty because of the incident with Isaac? The manager didn't want Finn to think that way. Of course, she cared deeply for her. And even if Finn acted like the Ice Queen, she was very dear to her. Her head hurt and she had a nosebleed due to sleep issues, but she was already feeling much better. Finn didn't want to talk about it anymore, so she suggested the manager change the subject. Noticing the package on the table, Finn wondered if it was really a well-wrapped lunchbox. It was indeed so. The package had been left by Isaac specifically for her. The manager was surprised, realizing he could be sweet and caring when he wanted. Inside the package was a small note, and it seemed Finn really liked him. There were rumors that the serial killer attacked victims every 3 months. It was true, as if from a movie script. Murder in the shadows. The killer acted according to the same pattern as their criminal. The timing, the way the victim was tied, and the method of injury, it was eerily similar. Perhaps the killer drew inspiration from that film. If the police kept this in mind, the case could be solved quickly, but they didn't understand why he did it again. The victims' hands were tied behind their backs. No one saw the crime scene until someone posted the photos online. It was a real nightmare. The horrible photos were still in his mind, and each victim had only 2 wounds. Isaac listened carefully, then smiled and said he was surprised there were only 2 wounds. Was all this tying up done just to deliver 2 blows? It was really funny. The killer could do whatever he wanted while the victims were helpless. He acted like a true idiot and was clumsy as well. The guys didn't see anything funny in the situation. They didn't understand why Isaac was smiling. Was he under some drug? Isaac wanted to apologize, but he just noted that the killer was unprofessional, which amused him. Their conversation was interrupted by Finn, who called Isaac. When he saw Finn in the office, he was very happy. He didn't know about her health, so he had been worried. He quickly went to her, telling the guys to return to the office without him. The guys were surprised. They recognized Finn from the support team and never imagined she would become friends with Isaac. If he hadn't found her at home in the morning, he decided to go to work. He asked how she felt and received a thank you for checking in. Could it be she was looking for him in the office to return the lunchbox he prepared for her? The girl really wanted to return the lunchbox, so she didn't even open it. The guy was very disappointed. He had prepared it personally and wanted to treat her from the heart. But the girl found an alternative. She suggested Isaac have lunch with her. She suggested that Isaac have lunch with her. They went outside and decided to eat in the fresh air. Besides, no one would disturb them by paying them special attention. Finn asked if he always did this. She was curious. Maybe he was doing it for the first time. The girl often took food with her and had lunch in the park. Isaac also wanted to know if she always did this alone. But she wasn't always alone. Sometimes she joined her colleagues. The guy smiled and couldn't believe the girl said it seriously. Finn didn't know he would be happy to hear that from her. At that moment, he felt special and very pleased. Finn realized it was very easy to upset or cheer him up. Did she think it was trivial, though it was just her style? That's why he was no longer surprised by anything. It was clear that even a small, spontaneous gesture from her meant a lot to him and brought a smile to his face. He wondered if Finn ever felt lonely. Perhaps sometimes it's nice to just be alone with yourself. In reality, he worried a little that he might be annoying her, so he apologized in advance if that were the case. He really enjoyed being with her and spending time together. He didn't annoy her because of himself. It was something else entirely. Isaac remembered well because the girl had already told him about it. She was learning a lot of new things about him and couldn't even imagine that he could cook. Isaac started living alone very early, so he had to learn. Not that he could cook complicated dishes, most were quite simple. Still, it was impressive. Few people knew how to cook nowadays, especially guys. He could use this skill to attract girls even more. From Finn's perspective, it sounded like advice or something similar. When she took a bite with her fork, she wondered if he was planning to kill her with this method. Could she really think he was capable of poisoning the food and then offering it publicly? She didn't rule it out, as she had a tendency to suspect everyone around her. At first, he thought she was joking, but then realized she was serious. So he grabbed her hand to prove once again that he had no bad intentions toward her and really wasn't a criminal. He decided to taste his own dishes first, to prove to the girl that the food was good quality and not poisoned. He easily put the food in his mouth while she held the fork. From the outside, it looked like she was feeding him, but she wondered, could Isaac really be the same Noah? He looked very much like him, with the same hair and eye color. His voice was similar, and she remembered it often. It was sad because she couldn't be sure, even if it were true. Yet why did looking at him always bring back memories of Noah, whom she had been so afraid of? Today, we dove into Finn's story, a young woman who's surprisingly mature for her age, navigating a life full of challenges and unexpected twists. We saw how her past, childhood traumas, and experiences with Noah affect her behavior, her trust in people, and how she sees the world around her. At the same time, Finn gradually opens up to Scott and Isaac. Scott shows care and concern, helping her feel safe, while Isaac, her new neighbor and colleague, stirs a mix of suspicion and curiosity, slowly building trust and a warm, almost romantic connection. The little moments, like the lunchbox he prepared, really highlight how care and attention can be shown in many ways. Against this personal backdrop, the serial killer case adds tension and keeps both Finn and us, the viewers, on edge. Everything intertwines to create a story rich with emotion, fear, anxiety, and small joys. Overall, this part of the story shows Finn learning to trust, to open up, and to care for herself, while new relationships and genuine concern from others help her deal with her past. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next part.